My name is David G, and I'm part of the music industry relations team here at Playing PE, and I will be your host today. And joining me is none other than my good friend and colleague, Bradley Gant, who is also part of the music industry relations team here at Playing PE. Before I bring him into this panel, first off, I just wanted to speak to this amazing competition that we've been so fortunate enough to be partnered with over the last several years. The International Songwriting Competition, or ISC, is now in its 20th year of discovering and propelling the careers of songwriters from all over the world. Previous ISC winners include artists such as Vance Joy, Gregory Porter, Tones and I, Passenger, Gautier, Elenium, Kelani. The list kind of just keeps on going. So if you have already entered the competition and just want to learn more about the prizing, you're in the right place. And if you haven't yet, if you're on the edge of your seat, or if you've been waiting to kind of figure out whether or not you wanted to actually submit your songs, jump over to the ISC website and enter your songs ASAP, because the ISC competition is for anybody. This year, ISC also has a brand new special promo that's starting, I guess, today, all depending on where you are in the world. If you're in Australia, and it is currently October the 5th, starting October the 5th until the 12th, we have a Promote Your Music Like the Pros special promo that is running until the 12th again. And that's going to have its own additional set of prizes, but is at the same time, you will be entered into the main ISC contest automatically. It's pretty much a win-win. So you can win a music promotion distributions campaign from up to and worth $1,000. So on top of that, the main competition has upwards of $150,000 in cash prizes to be shared between all of the winners, which we are told is still growing. So you could also get your songs heard by some of the ISC judges this year that include Mariah Carey, Coldplay, Tom Waits, Gloria Estefan, Linkin Park, and the list just goes on. So many incredible, talented artists are part of the judging for this year. Plus, if you win, Play MPE's promo packages are included, where you will get your music into the ears of countless more tastemakers in the industry. So more details on those prizes that come. I'd like to bring in my co-host for the day, Bradley Gant. So at home, put your hands together for Bradley Gant, who'll be joining us in just a second.
Thanks so much for joining me today. Really excited to be able to share more information about Playing PE and ISC and how we're working together. So Brad, I will kind of pass it over to you to give everyone viewing today a little bit of an insight into Playing PE.
Yeah, thanks for the lovely introduction. So everyone might be wondering what Playing PE actually is. If you have never been around before, basically we are a digital distribution platform, and we are servicing content to tastemakers, whether you're a record label, an artist, music promoter, and so on. Our tastemakers are spread across 6 different continents, and they may include MDs and PDs at radio. We have music supervisors, bloggers, music creators, and so on. We will get into that a little bit later. I'm sure there's many questions about who they are. And basically, there's 2 sides of Playing PE. We have the caster side that is for the senders. So that's where you're inputting all the information that you would like us to include in your release. So that could be anything that you would include in an EPK or one sheet, along with all the metadata, which is highly important for these tastemakers. We then have the player side. So the player side basically looks like a streaming platform for industry professionals, and that's where they're going to discover your music and have all the metadata available. The good thing about being on our platform is your content also stays on there forever. David, if you want to go over some of the prizes, I'll let you take it from there.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Brad. Again, if you folks have any questions about what Brad's going over or what I go over in terms of prizing or anything ISC related, please be sure to pop in your questions just in the Q&A below. We'll get to those a little bit later, okay? So of course, we're kind of segueing that perfectly now into ISC prizes that Playing PE will be partnering with and providing to the winners. Of course, there's grand prize winners, and grand prize winners can win a max distributions and promotions with Playing PE of $4,000 USD. You're able to use that within a 6-month time frame, similar to how Playing PE operates. You have a 6-month time frame for your release, and that could be your winning song, or it could be a previous release or something new that you have upcoming. With every release, you get a total of 3 blasts. So you have your initial send out, and then you have 2 additional reblasts. You will be very fortunate enough to do an interview with me moving forward if you are the grand prize winner as well. And then we will have that recorded and distributed to our marketing email that goes out to over 39,000 industry pros and artists around the world. So there's some other prizes in the line of People's Choice, and that would be a max value of $1,000 USD. There's going to be 22 first place winners, and those prizes, each of those winners will receive a distributions campaign with Playing PE of up to $500 USD per winner. And the reason why there's so many is because there's so many different genres and categories that ISC does cover. So if you need any additional information, make sure to go onto their website to verify all of the options available. And then the final one is the Play in PE special promotion. Maybe, Brad, we can segue that into perhaps you wanting to talk to our viewers in terms of what like a typical onboarding process would be with someone coming to the system for the first time. And I know that there was a question about sending out a demo request. Maybe we can kind of jump into what that kind of looks like once we have somebody coming in for the first time.
Yeah, so once you do come in as a demo request, basically what we do ask all of our clients to do is actually send an example of their music. Because what we do a little bit differently here is we actually vet all of our artists, labels, promoters, whoever's looking to send content to our recipients, because they do rely on us for that vetted content. Not only are we going to be able to advise you on what genre best suits your music, we can actually analyze the quality of the song to make sure that it is on a professional level. Now, this isn't to say that we're going to turn you away or anything like that. It's just to advise you. For example, I have had clients that just needed mix and mastering done to their songs, and they came back and it was actually on a professional level to then send out. We have a team of people all from radio, we have promoters, and so on that have come from that in the past. So we do have a lot of industry knowledge of what genres are most suited to particular songs. And it doesn't mean that you have to stay within one genre. I have artists that go from country all the way to AAA, and sometimes they might even throw in a dance EDM track because they're feeling experimental that day. So we will always help you set up the campaign for the most success. We also advise you, obviously, you do not want to have any cuss words when you're sending to radio or these tastemakers. However, we understand that some genres do have cuss words in them. So you can actually send a clean and explicit version if you do choose to. Also, obviously, if you're going to radio, you do not want a song that's 7 minutes long. So we will advise you, if the song is looking a little bit long, to have a radio edit made out of that.
Yeah, the one thing I would mention about 7-minute long songs is depending on the genre. Of course, we do touch on jazz and classical content as well. So those are some options that sometimes steer a little bit further into a longer style play. So just bear that in mind with any sort of project. We will be sure to advise you on what the best suited approach is, just so that you have the most opportunity for exposure and success. Nothing's guaranteed in this sort of world when it comes to radio distributions and promotions, but we'll do our best to put you in the right direction. So, of course, touching on all of that, Brad, in terms of right direction, maybe we could touch a little bit more about which territories we target and formats. I know you mentioned a few of them already with like country, AAA, and I touched on jazz and classical, but Bradley, if you wouldn't mind giving us a quick little rundown about some of our key territories and formats that we have across those markets, that would be great.
Absolutely. So we cover quite an international basis here at Play MPE. So we have the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, Nordics, and South Africa, along with 19 different Latin countries at the moment. We are constantly building out our list, but we do vet all of our recipients, so this does take time. There will be other options in the future, but these are the main ones that we do have. And as David mentioned, we do have a multitude of different genres. So we have the AAA, you can go to non-com. For example, the equivalent of that in Canada would be non-con CBC. And there's multiple genres covering dance, EDM, country. We've got AC. Pretty much any genre you can think of, we're probably covering in some shape or form. And we can obviously advise that because there is a lot of artists that come in that will classify themselves as pop. Now, when we're targeting radio, Pop can mean 8 different things. So it could be an indie pop rock song, or it could be really dance heavy pop. So that's where our expertise really come into place. And obviously there is prizes for many different options. As you can see on the ISC website, I've seen AC, dance, EDM, maybe you're just a songwriter and so on. But if you do win a prize, you get to expose your music to a larger market.
Amazing. And that's the thing, like it could be varied from being a few hundred recipients to a few thousand, all depending on the list options that you're targeting. And Plan P is here to provide you with as much information and insight, including feedback, to make sure that you're informed prior to your decisions. So we're not just here to send you in a direction without any information on what you're going to receive. Any and all questions are welcome. So again, please, if you do have any, toss those into the Q&A, which I see is filling up a little bit with us. So that's great. We will get to more of those questions a little bit later. To touch a little bit further into how we set up our incoming teams for success is also providing them with a list of what we recommend to include with all of their promotions that go through the system. So what that kind of looks like is a rundown of, audio files, album art. It's all of the assets. So you want to be including information about what your promo wants to state, very similar to the equivalent to an EPK or a one-sheet form of information that you're including, because we can include a bio, we can include your streaming numbers, we can include social media links, a video screenshot, or a link to a YouTube video, or wherever you have your videos posted. All of this would be laid out for you, and we'd provide you with thorough training on how to best use and maximize the potential of this campaign. But of course, again, with all your releases, you don't just have one send out with us, you have a total of 3. So we'll advise you on times in terms of when would be the best practices to have those sent out, and when would be the best time to consider utilizing your resends. Because when you are utilizing a system like this, you often will see engagement off of your first, but then we want to see all of this new information and share that with all of the recipients that you'd be targeting on a second or a third blast, providing them with new information about how the release has been doing from the initial get-go. So if you have new stations who are engaging, or if you have media coverage or press coverage, or maybe you have some ads at some editorials on streaming platforms, all of that information helps significantly to boost your overall consideration for airplay. So all of that would be provided by your Plain PE rep, who would be your account manager, whether that's Brad, myself, or any of the other executives on the team. We're here to advise you throughout the entire process. So Brad, maybe you could jump into a little bit more about what happens with the release and some of those frequently asked questions that you get. And maybe I could jump in there a little bit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So the big question is, what do you get? So as David just mentioned, included in the price, you're going to have an initial email blast that goes out, which comes from our mailing address. That way it's a solicited email. So that's the important part. As you can imagine, there is a lot of unsolicited content that goes to recipients. They simply don't have time to go through it all. Or as you can imagine, the quality isn't always there. So we do make sure that that's vetted for them. It stays on our, so mentioning the player, I touched on it a little bit. So the player is basically where the recipients can stream and download the song. That's where all the metadata is. Your content will stay on there forever. It never expires. So the good thing about that is if you decide to do a song in the future, those recipients could actually search up your artist name within their genre and be able to see prior material that you have serviced to the platform. So over time, you're essentially building up a catalog. David mentioned you have those 2 additional email blasts, so you do have 6 months to use them. Those do expire, but a good opportunity, as David said, to follow up, a simple reminder or an update on how the release is doing. And we do recommend 3 weeks between each blast to not bombard the recipient. So that's where our educating comes into place. As you can imagine, if you're just bombarding them, they don't take it well, they're less likely to actually engage with the release. Also, metadata is key. So especially if you're in Canada, for example, you're going to need to input that CanCon information. And as a general rule, the most important parts are ISRC code, copyright year, and then if you have a UPC for your particular project, please include it. But people are liking to see also all the writers that are involved in the project. David, did you want to take one of the other questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I can jump in here. So of course, Playing PE is here to provide you with as many opportunities for exposure as possible. And with our lists, we don't just jump into radio alone. Radio is a big focus of ours, of course, and not just AM, FM stations, not just terrestrial. We also do target internet and satellite radio. Within most of our lists across the US, we have a lot of those paired with additional recipients across the industry at like media, press, publications, marketing teams, labels, and so on. So you do get quite the array of exposure into different spaces and territories within the industry itself. There are some options, of course, that are add-on. Not all markets are the same. Maybe not all of those categories are included with all of the lists, depending on which market you jump into. But we do also have add-on options for global music bloggers, as well as music supervisors for sync placements across TV, film, and video games. So there's a lot of opportunity there for you to explore what might be the best suited approach for your content. And maybe if you're instrumental leaning and have less lyrical content, then maybe music supervisors are a great route that you'd never considered. Even catalog content is a huge factor in being able to just make things available for people across the industry. Catalog is having a huge resurgence over the last few years, as we've seen across TikTok, social media as a whole, and even with placements across Netflix, for example, with that Kate Bush track that resurfaced. There's a lot of opportunity with your catalog content as well. So maybe both of us can kind of touch on this as well, Brad, but I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, why should I focus my attention on radio? Isn't it all about streaming? And yes, to a lot of people out there, streaming is the be all end all now. But what I think a lot of artists don't realize is the huge potential that you have of making significant revenue as an independent artist from getting any sort of stream versus getting the spin. The stream will give you a fraction of a dollar, maybe a few pennies, whereas like a spin at radio will get you far more. And that varies all depending on the space that you're targeting. But for example, in the Canadian market at CBC, one spin there is somewhere around $20 to $30 for a spin.
It's actually
so the royalties,
31.
There you go. So the royalties are far more significant when you are considering any sort of spin at radio. So there's a lot of opportunity and a lot more potential to jump into things outside of traditional algorithms. You're going to be meeting people or getting your content heard by people outside of those. And that's a huge factor in why radio is such a prominent importance, especially for independents. Brad, is there anything else you would want to touch on that?
Yeah, and I'd like to add, think of it more as a discovery tool. So when we are sending it out to these tastemakers, whether it be an MD or PD at station, whether it be a music supervisor, this is going to the decision makers who decide what's actually getting put into rotation at radio or what's actually going into a film, movie. They're the same thing. TV, movie, or video game, for example, if you're going to music supervisors. So if a radio, no matter how big or small, because we do cover terrestrial, satellite, internet, AM, FM stations, no matter how big or small, let's say there's 100 people listening to that station, but 10% of them like your content. That's 10 people that may have never discovered your content that could then go into the streaming and become a fan. So you're putting it in front of people that may have never seen that content. Whereas with streaming, it is all well and good if you get into a playlist, but if it's just sitting there, it's basically invisible. So it's a way to get discovered. Also, if you have a fan and they're hearing you on the radio, trust me, they're going to be hyped about it. So it kind of legitimizes you as an artist as well, if you are lucky enough to get on there. Obviously, streaming is a big thing, but as David mentioned, the payouts for radio and the discovery is far larger.
That's great. And that's sometimes information that independent teams aren't already aware of. So Playing P, myself, Brad, and the whole team on the music industry relations side are really here to provide you with feedback, insight, and just educate you on things that you may not already be aware of. So on that note, I wanted to jump into some of these questions that we have in the chat here. And I know, Emmy, you sent us a question here earlier on about booking a demo. So please, if you haven't heard back from us as of yet, please follow up. We will do our best to get back to all of our demo requests within a timely manner. But as you can imagine, we do get quite a few of them. So if we've missed yours in the past, we apologize, but please fill out another one or reach out to Brad and myself directly. We can add some additional contact details shortly, and then we'll connect soon. I do apologize for the delay though. Meredith, we had a question from her, which was asking, and maybe Brad, you could help me with this question. What is your best advice for getting kids' songs played anywhere?
Getting it played anywhere is very broad. There is obviously some particular genres. It would depend on the song. We would have to listen to it because it could be an array of genres. It could be a kid singing country. It could be just a general kid song. For example, in our non-com list, they have specialist stations that are playing children's music. The key to it would be have it mixed and mastered professionally, and now this doesn't have to go to some big like studio or anything like that. But everyone knows what a professional level song sounds like. And if you don't, please send it our way. We will tell you honestly. Also, make sure if you do decide to use us, that when you do see the report, that you're doing some additional follow-up yourself as well. Relationships are key in this industry. So if you can simply say, thanks for streaming or downloading my song, it can go a long way. Being polite, building that audience, but also make sure it's like engaging marketing content as well. So catchy subject lines if you're going down the route of using us or sending emails out, making sure you inform anyone of like the location you're in, especially if you're a Canadian artist. There's local stations that may only play Alberta artists, for example, but also having release artwork that's appropriate to children's music. So for example, seasons is a big thing. You're not going to have, if you're sending out a song in winter time about Christmas, you're not going to have a picture of you sunbathing on the beach, for example. So make it appropriate to the content that you are creating, and just reach out to us if you need help in terms of markets to target.
Yeah, just to add one additional thing on there, as Brad kind of mentioned, reaching out to your local markets is really important, because if you can get any sort of initial buy-in from stations or teams within your local market, that'll just help in establishing more of a relationship across the board, and hopefully then propel you with future releases if you've built that relationship with your local stations. Of course, doing it so educated in the sense of understanding what sort of content they are playing, so that you aren't just going in and sending your content to a station that may be only playing AAA content, for example, or hip hop. You don't want to be proposing your children's song to the incorrect station or at the incorrect time. So really making sure you get to know those stations prior to reaching out is really important as well, because that'll show them that you've done your research and that you're coming in informed, and then they're that much more likely to engage with your content. Alexander, I saw that you had raised your hand and also tossed in a question. So I'm going to bring you into the panel just to ask that question or anything else you might have. Yes. Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us, Alexander. Where are you joining us from?
I'm actually in a town called Shepton Mallet.
Shepton Mallet. Brad is actually British, so I imagine he may potentially be familiar with that town.
Yeah, fantastic. Are you? Can you see me also?
No. So we have disabled the video, so it is just your voice at this moment.
Okay. Oh well, thanks so much for inviting me on. Yeah, my question is just I started off with a bit of experience first. So I just wrote, hello, it is quite difficult to get serious results from promoting. How can Play MPE actually help me get those large droves of figures at my web page?
So at your web page, of course, with all of our distributions that we do with Playing PE, you have the opportunity to include all of your social media, as well as any sort of website or links that you would like to have included. So what we do in terms of an offering that can help you get to those droves of people is the lists that we have access to. So as Brad mentioned earlier, we do have managed distributions lists, and we do have a list management team. So this list management team is on an annual basis going through all of our markets and all of our lists to ensure that all of these recipients are as up to date as possible. So when we are sending your content through our delivery and the email blast notification, that's where you can include all of your pertinent information. But because it is also a trusted delivery service, and we are getting through all of those spam and junk blocks that many unsolicited emails may not get through, you have that much more of an opportunity to engage with people outside of the norm or the traditional, marketing tactics that independents might be finding difficulty with. Because a lot of those efforts sometimes go unnoticed because those don't make it through those spam and junk spam blocks. Whereas with Playing PE, we've been a trusted service in the industry since 2003. So with our efforts combined with your own, we hope that we can provide that to large droves and hopefully see some large success in terms of consideration for airplay. But on top of that, engagement that we provide you on your reporting.
Do you mind if I continue to kind of have the conversation with you, David?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. It's nice to hear you have all of that opinion. Can I just ask, just out of courtesy, are you in the UK, Bradley, at the moment?
I'm actually situated in Vancouver, Canada. Like David, he's actually living upstairs. So I could walk to his house walk to his apartment in about 20 seconds.
Oh, that's nice to know. It's nice to know that you're having fun.
Yeah, but we have half of our team is actually based in the US, but the power of Zoom allows us to communicate with people all over the world. So we have clients that in the morning I could be talking to Europeans, people in South Africa. In the day I could be US, Canada, but we're also talking to Australians and people from New Zealand in the afternoon. So we will make it work somehow.
Yes, I always find it such a breathtaking experience. So nice to talk to you. I have found that without knowing everything about Play MPE right now, and without maybe revealing in the game some questions that aren't so interesting, I was just wondering, at the moment, my statistics are, as you were mentioning earlier, David, my statistics are sort of like a couple of US dollar cents per month at the moment. They're not what I wanted in the long term. I've had a few supporters who have bought trophies, which boosted my income a little bit, but I'm certainly not seeing the sort of statistics which are amazing for artists in the little AudioMac club, which is where I am with this website called AudioMac. And it's become a real, how can I put it, a real bombshell of lack of understanding for me personally in terms of how to comprehend this, because I can't work out, after I've emailed people with Instagram, messaged them with all the social media platforms, I can't figure out how to go from a few thousand plays up to those really staggering high numbers. So I was wondering, with Play MPE, does it matter, for example, if it approaches the UK market or the German market, or is it the US market? And I'm afraid I've got like multiple questions as well along the lines of, if I haven't forgotten, it was to do with the fact that most of my music was recorded with GarageBand, online software for the Apple Mac computer. Right. And it was my mother and father who mentioned GarageBand to me. And at first I thought, that's not right, because it's not a studio. But I did decide to continue with it. And I've recorded most of my songs with GarageBand. And it turns out that there's feedback issues with the microphone. So it doesn't actually sound similar to a recording that's been recorded in a studio. Rather, it sounds like a little bit sketchy. There's some feedback issues, and I'm starting to believe that this is why perhaps it's not ready for radio and so on. So just wondering, if I went with Play MPE, what would I need to outlay, or in what sort of terms can those sort of questions be answered, really?
Yeah, so when it comes to any sort of DAW setup or anything like that, in terms of your digital audio workshop, GarageBand is a great entry-level option because there are other options where you can jump into the next tier, such as Logic, which is very similar to GarageBand. And of course, within the team of Playing PE, we can provide you with any type of feedback or insight into approach. Some of us have more experience than others. In terms of some of the team has been in the industry for 30 plus years, whereas a few of us have been in less than 10. So it's really quite varied in terms of what sort of information we can provide, but we all are pulling resources from one another to ensure that we're providing the best answers available to any of our clients coming through. In the sense of what you are trying to accomplish with increasing your overall engagement, sometimes that is a slog. Sometimes reaching out via social media isn't always as easily successful, because a lot of those times people can also put up blocks for that and it doesn't always get into the immediate inbox. So a lot of the approach that's necessary to be able to see some long-term results requires some creativity in terms of how you approach. And it's not always the same approach every time. Maybe if you find someone's Instagram account and you attempt reaching out that way initially, maybe in a secondary approach, because you don't receive any initial feedback, maybe you then look to try and find an email address or look to find a phone number. And sometimes key individuals will only respond to outreach in a specific way. But we're here to also provide you feedback and insight on how to do that in terms of the approach, whether that's through a phone call, what you should say, or whether that's in an email, and the similar things that you should be saying when prioritizing your outreach. Brad, did you want to touch on any of that as well?
To add on that, I just came from a conference with MDs and PDs, and they said Instagram, they pretty much ignore all of the messages because you should be approaching them in a business manner. What they like to say, they have their email available on websites. It doesn't take that much work to actually find. So approach them in a polite business manner on there. Instagram is their personal space, so they don't want to deal with business on that side. So let's not say everyone, but from what they say, unless if it's something spectacular, they don't really like people reaching out to them on social media.
So to that note, Alexander, of course, if you do have any additional questions, please do feel free to reach out to either of us or submit a demo request, and we'd be happy to schedule some time with you to go over some additional questions. So I just want to say thank you for jumping into the panel with us and asking some questions. If you or anyone else does have additional questions, Alexander, I'm actually going to pop you out of the panel now. So thank you so much for joining us from the UK later in your evening. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Absolutely. So if anybody else does have any additional questions for us, please do toss them in the chat or raise your hand real quick and we can pop you into the panel with us as well. And if you didn't want to ask any questions here, or you wanted to ask questions to either of us in person, you can also look to schedule a demo on the website, and then we'll get back to you as shortly as we can. JK, we have your hand raised. We're going to bring you in as well to ask any questions.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Hi there, Jay. Yes, we can
Hey.
hear you loud and clear. How are you? Where are you joining us from today?
Thanks. Nottingham, UK.
There we go. Fantastic.
All the Brits are here representing.
Thanks for this. Really helpful. My question is about actually. So I guess the key to success in promoting our music is finding the right audience. So how would the Play MP support that? How would you guys help us find the proper audience? Because I mean, for every type of music, there's an audience out there, and it could be even scaled up within that. So yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, I can jump in on that one. So I know you missed the first 10 minutes. So we'll just quickly, it's all good. We'll quickly go over it. It's a good reminder for everyone. So where Play MP actually comes into place, we actually vet all of our clients. So what we do ask for before we even get in a discussion is that you do provide some material, whether that's a song, album, EP, LP, all of that jazz. We want to listen to your music to check for the quality, but also so when we hop on a call, we're not just going over all options. We're going to go over options that are actually appropriate to your genre. For example, lots of people have folk music, for example, or they might have alternative folk, which came up a lot at the conference. Now we're going to listen to the song and we're going to actually analyze where we feel it's the best fit. So you have some judgment on where you should actually send to. We actually prefer to actually give you the advice because we want to make sure our recipients are also receiving appropriate material to them as well.
Cool. All right, thanks. Yeah, that's I've just scheduled a demo, so hopefully we can talk soon.
Perfect. Yeah, be
Thanks,
on the
guys.
lookout for a follow-up email from either Brad or myself or anybody else from our industry relations team. And we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But thank you so much for joining us, Shane. Thanks for jumping into the panel. And thanks for joining
cheers.
us from the UK.
Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. We did have another question that came in from Leilani. I believe I'm saying that correctly. Apologies. Leilani, would you like to join us in the panel? If you would, raise your hand real quick and we can jump in. If not, we can certainly answer the question here live as well. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Leilani. Where are you joining us from today?
I'm actually in Washington, D.C.
Perfect. Okay. On the North American side.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for tagging me in. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you did toss in a question in the Q&A, but I thought it would be great if you were available and interested to jump into to this with us today. So did you want to? Here, I'll answer. I'll say your question out loud real quick. So it's
okay.
You mentioned you seem to have touched on this prior in your professional opinions. What is your take on music promoters that DM, email, etc. for Spotify, playlisting, promote music on social media, etc. for a fee? Are these promos ripoffs? Are the listens, views legit or bots? I've used these sources before. It seems the results are short-term in views and listens, etc. So is there anything else that you would want to kind of touch on with that, Leilani?
That's pretty much it, but it does seem, I just want to expand on it a little bit. Like it seems, to give an example, like one of my songs went viral and it hit like 20,000 views. I used one of those sources. And then, after a few weeks, it dropped to like 200, for the month, or, what I'm saying? Like, so I noticed that a lot, and I get reached out to a lot by those kind of quote unquote promoters. And I'm like, are these real? Are these bots? What is this? So your take.
Yeah, so it is quite varied. What we always recommend in any instance when you have people reaching out to you directly is that you do your due diligence in terms of your research. There are a lot of systems and a lot of things out there that touch on, being able to provide you guarantees, being able to provide you this amount of streams in this amount of time. And when it seems too good to be true, sometimes it's best to make sure that you are doing that due diligence, doing as much in-depth research as you possibly can, because as much as this space is all about supporting creatives and helping push independent content forward, there's a lot of unfortunate situations that do take place in an industry where there's a lot of people putting forth their creativity and their hearts when they are expressing their content through this. So there are situations where that sort of stuff does transpire and it is not legitimized. So we can't really speak to all of them. But if you do have people who are reaching out to you directly, it's always a best practice. And we always say this whenever we're having conversations with any of our independents, is know everything that you can about even our system before saying yes.
just because we want to make sure that you're well informed. We'll provide you with all the information we can, even if it is information about external sources or other opportunities, because we are here to let you know that, yes, Playing PE is the gold standard for promotions and distributions, but there are other options. If you do want to explore those, we're not here to tell you to not do that. We're here to make sure that you are educated and that you can make the right decision based on all the information that you have.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that totally answers my question. And you know, I learned not to go by like the follows of the accounts, right? Because you can always buy, you know, make yourself look more legitimate than are. So yeah,
Exactly.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, don't do that. It messes up the algorithm.
Yeah. I've had some experiences, but yeah, I guess it just does boil down to doing more in-depth research and all of that. But yeah, well, I appreciate your time for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, Leilani. Thanks so much for the question.
No problem.
Okay, where was that other button here? So if there were any other people that had any other questions, comments, concerns, we do still have a little bit of time left. Oh, we got another one. Emmy from Kenya.
I can jump in here.
Yeah, perfect.
So in terms of African markets, we do actually cover the South African market at the moment. And a lot of the content that is going there, obviously you got Amapiano, which is huge over there. That's probably their most played genre. You got the Afro beats, but they also do have other sectors. So for example, just came from a conference with South Africa, and they actually have a Canadian band that's actually the first people to basically tour South Africa since the pandemic, and they're doing hugely successful over there. And they actually have made a living out of going to the South African market and don't even focus on international markets as much anymore. So in terms of genre wise, there isn't such genre specification in terms of when you're sending to radio to South Africa. It's more we send to those recipients, but then they basically pinpoint what genre they would classify as.
Yeah, to touch on that in the light of promoting African music to international markets, specifically in North America, to be more specific, there are options in regards to styles or genres in the African side of music where you can promote them to a specialty programming list that we do have. And that's along the lines of the non-commercial NPR in the US and then non-commercial CBC in Canada. The non-commercial options are generally more specialty programming. So they have a variety of styles of content that they do play. In one of our previous questions that we did have, Brad touched on the fact that non-commercial NPR also caters to children's music. So that format in itself has a plethora of styles that they engage with, but you and your account rep are there to determine what the best suited approach would be, whether that's going domestic if you are based in South Africa or anywhere in Africa and just targeting that market, or if your interest lies in exporting that content and having that delivered elsewhere. We're here to hear what your needs are, what your requests are, and to make sure that we put you in the right direction for the most opportunity as possible.
Just to add on that as well, in terms of genres, Christian music is heavily pushed to South Africa and African options. So we do have an international Christian list, which covers all of the countries that we did mention, but there is quite a few African Christian stations in there as well, for any Christian artists wondering.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Emmy, for the question and for jumping in and tuning in from Kenya. Appreciate that. So we got a couple more minutes here. If there was anybody else wanting to toss in any questions, or if anyone wants to raise their hand and jump into the panel with us, we will leave it open for a couple more minutes here. But again, if you do have any questions in regards to ISC and you're not too sure, make sure you jump onto their website just to look at all the additional details that are available there. And If you do have any questions or would like to hop into a demo with any of us at Play PE, you can go to the Play PE website and book a demo there as well. Generally, we'll get back to you within our best 2 business days at most. But if you haven't heard from us, please do follow up or send any questions that you do have through to our support team or staff. We have an additional question here from Stephanie Phillips, asking us if we're familiar with Music X-Ray. And perfect. Okay, thank you, Stephanie, for the question. I personally am not familiar with Music X-Ray. I have not engaged with them to this point. And your question to legitimacy, of course, very similar to the question that we answered with Leilani, is looking up the legitimacy of that group or team or company that that you're looking to engage with. It's always important to make sure that you do your due diligence. Even ask maybe your local market or local artists that you have engaged with if they've ever heard of it. Just because you haven't heard of a platform doesn't necessarily mean that its legitimacy is not there. It could just mean that there's maybe more of the opportunity where they're growing and developing their space or their niche. So I would highly encourage you to reach out to other artists, check out their website, dive through it very deeply, maybe even jump into Reddit to find additional information, because there are so many different forums in that space. But then, of course, in certain situations like that, taking everything with a grain of salt, because none of it is, you can't take all the words on the internet. You have to take it all with a grain of salt. But I'd highly recommend that you do as much due diligence as you can, just to learn more about what Music X-Ray is. So thank you so much for that question, Stephanie. Hey, Aaron, can you hear us?
Hello. Where are you guys from?
So we're both actually based out of Vancouver, Canada. Whereabouts are you based from?
Vancouver, that's what's up. Shout out International Song Competition. Shout out Play MP. I'm tuning in from Sudbury, Ontario, Canada. I was looking to see if I could ask a question. And then
Yeah, absolutely, please.
So I guess my question is attending this panel a good step towards winning the competition?
I would say it's a good step in learning more about what you can win with the platform and with the competition itself. There is many different stages in terms of what the judges are looking for and what sort of content they're looking for. But independent artists jumping into that space have so many opportunity for overall exposure, so that maybe if you don't even win the grand prize, getting your content heard by that panel of judges is almost a win in itself. So I can't say that it guarantees anything, but I can say that it does put you in a better direction to at least understand what you can receive, how to best kind of utilize that service, as well as playing PEs on top of it. But it is a great spot for you to at least start initially. And have you already submitted your track, Aaron?
I did, yeah. I had a very small budget. I would have liked to buy. I submitted using the hip hop field. I wanted to do the unreleased one as well, so there's different options. But I did the hip hop one, and I submitted my track in time. I know there's like an extended date for it, but I got in before the extended date. But I'm hoping I win that. We're
going to get into some of these additional questions that y'all have been tossing into the Q&A. One of our first questions that we received was, how does Play MPE work? Is it pay to play? Well, Play MPE does have a minimum spend to use the service. So it's $250 USD, and all depending on your market, that may differ. It's $250 AUD as well. But if you do have questions about your specific market, please feel free to reach out to our team, and we'd be more than happy to answer for your local market and what your needs are. Is it pay to play? The second part of that question. You know, the word pale has been tossed out in the past, and there still are situations where that is prominent in certain spaces. But with Play PE, we are solely that distributions platform to get your content delivered to tastemakers. So there's no additional package. There's no way that you could pay us more to get actual airplay. That's just not how we work. We're more of a delivery system for your distributions to get sent to tastemakers across the industry. Like, how can I promote my music on the radio and have more streams and loyal visitors or fans that support my career?
So great question. Promoting your music to radio, well, you found us, so you're here already. We actually, when we are sending out, it's typically going to music directors and program directors, so the actual decision makers at radio. We also vet your content to make sure that it is high quality, so you will not be able to get into the system without us checking some sort of project that you have in mind, to also advise you to go to the right recipients, and then getting more streams. Now, we don't deliver to streaming platforms as such, but think of radio, music supervisors, bloggers, etc. This is a discovery tool for them. So when you are sending out your content, you are sending it out to decision makers. Let's say they really like your song. Let's say they're a very small station. Let's say they only have 100 listeners. Still great for you as an artist, but you're actually exposing your music to 100 new listeners. Let's say 10% of them like your song. That's 10 people that could then go looking for your content. So that's why we typically do recommend it could take a real 360. So it could go from radio, they discover you, they play you, and then someone who may have never discovered you anywhere will then go looking for your content to then potentially become a fan. So that's how it could turn into fans. Now, we can't guarantee that. There is some people that do great on radio, but their streaming numbers are really low. There's people that have millions and millions of streams, but they don't do as successful at radio. It's just the music business, I guess. We can't predict anything, but it is a good way to put yourself in front of a new audience.
That's great. And one of the other questions that we had kind of ties into that, and that was, what is the most significant way Playing PE could impact an artist like myself that's an independent? And as Brad kind of alluded to, it's being able to put you into different lights that you may not have even considered prior. So for example, in the Australian market, we can be targeting you to radio recipients, but then we do also have industry professionals across media, press, publications, music supervisors for film and television, in-flight, in retail spaces. So these could be spaces that you've never even considered getting your music played at before. But imagine you get a text from a friend that says they've heard your music at a local shop. Those are the sort of things that Playing P can kind of help open the doors for, especially in a world where there's so much information out there. If you know that you can go to this one spot and get your content delivered to multiple facets of recipient types, then hopefully with your efforts combined with Playing PE's in terms of going through your reports that we provide you and looking exactly at who is engaging with your content, you'll be able to build some long-lasting relationships to then hopefully provide you some more opportunity for exposure, as well as consideration for airplay and just overall press and coverage. I just want to thank everybody for tuning in today. It's been great to be able to go over a little bit more about what the ISC competition has on their 20th anniversary. Again, we have so many incredible packages that are available with this competition and with the pros special promo that we do have going on from the 5th until October 12th. So please, if you have any questions or you want to learn more about ISC or Playing PE, please make sure to check us out on both of our websites. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. We look forward to hopefully seeing you on a demo and get to speak with you soon and discover your music.